The Stranger. My wife and I recently moved to her hometown into her childhood home. It was bigger than our old house with plenty of room for not just our 2 cats, but a new kitten. He was a feisty little guy, easily the most courageous of his siblings. When we brought him home, it wasn't long before he wanted to explore every nook and cranny of the place. If there was any space we thought it was too dangerous to let him into, he would throw a hissy fit at us, annoyed that there was an untouched area that he wasn't allowed into. All this is to say, our little guy, Rorschach, was not easily cowed. It was a little surprising to us then, when he was staring, hair up and back arched, into what was to be my wife's office one evening. The light was on, so I don't think there was any way he could have mistaken anything in there for a threat. Our other cat, Tarare, was also in the office, so we thought maybe he got spooked by her, seeing as how the little guy still hadn't gotten completely used to the other cats. I checked the office anyway, for pests or the like, then to be thorough, I looked along the wall outside. Nothing amiss. We didn't think anything of it at the time. After all, Tarare was completely at ease in the office. A few days later, we put our other cat, Häagen-Dazs, alone in the bathroom with the hot water running. She had allergies and the steam from the shower seemed to ease her sinuses. After a short while, my wife, we'll call her Roxanne, went to the bathroom to check on her. When she went in, she saw Häagen-Dazs staring intently at the running water. She called her name, but she didn't respond. Maybe the running water was too loud. She reached down to pet her, but when she did, Häagen-Dazs flipped out, literally. She sprung up and flipped against the wall like a jack-in-the-box popping out. I don't know what made the poor girl so spooked. We'd done this shower treatment for her at least a dozen times before, but I guess it was the first time in the new house. Again, we didn't think much of this, as all that really happened was our cat got spooked by a room she wasn't really used to. Cats are finicky like that. Häagen-Dazs was no different, and unlike Rorschach, was fairly timid and skittish. In fact, I wouldn't have bothered writing and posting anything about these 2 pretty mundane experiences had it not been for the next few weeks, and now I can't help but feel there could be more to them. I should note how our house is situated. For the most part, it's the usual setup of a neighbor's house on either side and facing the street. The back, though, rather than being framed by more neighbors, is lined with the town cemetery. It's actually nice because most of our neighbors play loud, obnoxious music. Not a peep from the cemetery, though. Anyways, the first few weeks at the house went without incident besides those with the cats. Around the 4th week, though, a few things seemed to be amiss. Little things mostly. Lights would flicker off, just for a moment, then something would be in a spot where I swear I didn't leave it. One time I heard my wife call my name from another room, so I went to check on her. "What?" she asked. "You called me." I told her. "Nah, your headphones must be blurring other noises." "Maybe." I did always wear headphones while doing most household tasks. Still, I heard her call my name clear as crystal. Could have been she was messing with me. We did often scare each other. But that was always by cheap jump scares. Maybe she was making her scare game more convoluted, but I didn't think so. This was a woman whose humor was people falling over. She wasn't exactly all about subtlety. Besides, if she was messing with me, she would have made sure to laugh at me about it later, but she never did. That was one of the weirder happenings. Another thing was my figurines. I collect a lot of action figure type stuff, Bionicles mostly. Yes, I'm 26 years old. Most of them are pretty posable figures and can have their limbs and heads moved every which way. Well, I had a few on the kitchen table that I hadn't put on a shelf yet. When I woke up one morning and went into the kitchen to make coffee, I barely noticed that all their heads were looking at the window that faced the cemetery. I know none of them were posed like that the day before. I don't think my wife did that to mess with me either. It's such a small thing that I could have easily missed. I kinda wish we had some curtains for that window now. Writing this now, I also just realized when the weird goings-on stopped, at least for a little while. Our house used to have central heating and AC, but the system hasn't been used for years, and we had no plans to start it back up again anytime soon. So all the ceiling vents that had been open, we closed. It was such a small thing that I didn't think about at the time. But that's when all the weird happenings stopped for about a week. I pushed the past events to the back of my mind and assumed it was over. We'd more or less settled in and everything was finally smoothing out. I was content to jot the odd stuff up to the expected stress of moving into a new home. My convenient illusion came to an inconvenient conclusion, though, when my wife and I were woken up in the middle of the night by a terrified yelping. I got up and went to the kitchen where it was coming from. When I turned the light on, I saw Häagen-Dazs screaming and yelping and pawing at the kitchen window. I put on my shoes and went outside and looked around with my phone light. I probably should have also carried a blunt object like a bat or something, but I never claimed to be smart now, did I? Besides, I assumed it would be something like another cat that set Häagen-Dazs off. Our neighborhood had plenty of outdoor cats after all, and a similar thing happened at our old house with Tara. Her and a stray cat had gotten into a tiff with the window, keeping them from getting at each other. Anyway, I couldn't find anything outside to warrant concern. That is until I shined the light on the window. That's when my blood froze. On either edge of the window was a dirty handprint, and in the middle was a badly drawn happy face, also from dirt. 2 dots and a semicircle. The dirt had dripped down in spots. From the left eye it looked like a tear. I did not want to be outside a second longer. I went in and made sure all the doors were locked. When I told Rox and what happened, we decided to call the police. We told them what happened and showed them the handprints. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, there were no fingerprints to examine. Whoever it was must have been wearing gloves, they said. They told us that since we weren't in the best neighborhood, it's possible that some kid was in our yard and trying to mess with us. There wasn't much else they could do, so we were told to keep an eye open and call if anything else happened. We didn't really sleep that night. The next couple of weeks were rough to say the least. I started finding those same dirty handprints on both of our vehicles. A couple times there was one on the living room window. We called the cops again twice, but there was still no way to trace the prints. I wanted to set up cameras, but we couldn't afford much in that department. One night I did tape my phone high on the wall facing the cemetery to record all night. Nothing. Things came to a head on a Saturday night. We were just about to fall asleep when I heard something that froze my blood. A knock. At the back door. Well, not quite a knock. More like a slap. I got up and put on my robe. Quietly as I could, I inched to the front door. Rox and waited for me in the living room. I put my ear close to the back door, waiting. In spite of me wearing a fairly thick robe, it felt so cold. I know we hadn't insulated the back door, but still, the cold air was thick and almost made it hard to breathe. Even though I was expecting it, I still almost jumped out of my skin when I heard the slap again. The hand, or what I assumed was the hand, slid against the door. Almost like a cat pawing, but slower and more rough. And also more deliberate. The doorknob remained undisturbed. I motioned away from the door as silently as I could. My hand found a hammer that I still hadn't found a place in the house for. The stranger pawed at the door once more. That's about when I heard the stranger's voice, only it wasn't a stranger's voice. It was my wife's voice on the other side of the door. "Hello?" said the stranger. I was not about to answer back. The way their greeting was spoken sounded breathy, almost like a whispered hiss. I could see Roxanne from where I stood at the kitchen/back door. Through the darkness, I could see her face had gone ashen. I can't imagine I looked any different. The stranger's one word had shifted our perspective on the past few weeks. Whatever was on the other side of that door was no punk kid or vagrant. No telling if it was really a person at all. And while my wife and I said nothing to each other, the looks we exchanged affirmed that neither of us wanted to find out. After waiting for a few painfully long minutes, the stranger made a new noise. Not a slap on the door, but a knock. And then they spoke once more, now more clearly and fluently. "Hello." It was my own voice this time. I had to cover my mouth to keep from gasping. It knocked one more time, in this case with a rhythm I used all the time. Shave and a haircut. Knock, 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 knock. Now I was starting to get pissed. It's like it was mocking us, and not just because it was using our voices. Still, I was not about to open the door. Nor were either of us going to say a word to our would-be intruder. All we could do was wait. It didn't knock again. It didn't repeat its greetings. All it did was breathe, loud enough to be heard by me anyway. It sounded tired. Almost like an old man whose lungs weren't what they used to be. I hoped it couldn't hear us breathe. For the better part of an hour I stood by the door shivering. I should have been sweating in my thick robe. Eventually the breathing faded, and the deep chill subsided. And the room felt normal again. For a minute I thought it was over, and maybe it was. But I never claimed to be smart now, did I? For whatever reason, curiosity, stupidity, whatever you like, I moved my hand to the doorknob. I saw my wife shake her head at me emphatically. I mouthed a probably unconvincing "it'll be fine" at her, and I opened the door and went outside. I shined my phone light through the night and saw no sign of anything. It was a quiet, still night. Peaceful even. Or at least it would be if it weren't for the past hour. I shined my light at the still open door. On the outside was the familiar dusty handprint, slid down the door. I put my hand next to it. It was a little smaller than mine. I decided it was probably time to get back inside and lock the door. That was about when I heard a gust of wind getting louder by the second. I swore under my breath and scrambled inside, and just as I was slamming the door, I felt a burst of blistering cold, dusty wind. I looked at Roxanne. She had both hands in her hair and the most horrified look I had ever seen on her face. I tried to think, to delude myself, that maybe it was just ordinary wind, or that I'd closed the door in time. But I knew better. I'd let my curiosity get the best of me, and I'd foolishly let a stranger into our house.
The end. Choose here your next story. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe Curious Voices for more.